Kearney as a consultant, and I've worked in India and in Middle East. I've spent 2 years there at Kearney, and this was right after my graduation from IIT Bombay. So Kearney recruited me from during our placement season in 2018. I also run Annapurna Movement. It's a non-profit which is focused on supporting poor communities in Mumbai during COVID. During college, I was part of the 2014-2018 bachelor's batch at IIT Bombay. I did a civil engineering major and design minor, and I also was part of the founding team of the design club there. Okay, so before we start, I just want to let you know of how we'll run this. So at any point, if you have any questions, please do put it in the chat box and we will take it up as we go through the session. At the end of the session, we can also have a Q&A where you can ask your questions and we will address those. And going forward, I will circulate this PPT with everyone. So in case you need to reach out to me to discuss anything or if you have further questions, you can email me and I will respond to you. So this would definitely help. And again, if you can find me, I'm also there on Facebook. So if you find me on Facebook, you can also drop me a chat message and I will reply. So the first thing that we want to cover today is what are the different type of interviews and what goes into them, and what kind of why those different kind of interviews are even taken in the first place. So I'm sure you would be slightly familiar that there's a HR or fit interview. These are for general assessment and typically taken by the HR manager or HR members of the interview council. This can either be a first round interview or is a last round interview where they know that, okay, this candidate is a good candidate and we want to just check if he fits in culturally well. A lot of the HR interview questions will revolve around tell me about a time when you faced a challenge and how you overcame that, right? That is a very typical HR question. What they are also trying to look for is your short-term and long-term goals and whether that aligns with the company and whether you will be able to fit in the company. There are some organizations who also have more difficult working environment. So if you join Schlumberger as a company, you have to spend 6 months on an oil rig, and then you get some break where and for like 1 or 2 months you're based out in Mumbai or other cities. So this is something which is not a very typical working culture, and this is a slightly different thing, right? In these cases, HR interviews become very important because people want to understand whether you are aware of what kind of working environment you will be joining in and whether you'll be able to fit in with that. The second is a stress test. When I say stress test, I mean this is not a different interview altogether. It's a more style of interview, and the idea behind doing this is to understand whether how the candidate performs in difficult and stressful situations. And this will happen with you when you're on the job, right? You might have to defend your point of view or answer difficult questions to senior management, maybe 2-3 weeks after you join the company, and they want to make sure that you're able to hold your ground in these cases. I will discuss on how to prepare for each one of them, but the idea behind a stress test from the interview panel is to not trouble you in any way or not make it unnecessarily difficult for you, but to just make sure that in a difficult situation, are you able to respond logically and calmly, or are you very, very disturbed and you're not able to even reply? So that's the stress testing. Then there are technical interviews. This is for generally testing the extremely technical knowledge. For example, FMCG companies or core engineering job companies will test you on the actual content of what you've read and understood in the last few years. So supply chain, coding, analytics is a type of technical interview set. Then there is a slightly more diverse technical interview, which finance companies, coding companies, analytical companies, all of them can take, which is the quantitative problems. So doing quick math problems, and doing quick probability questions, those things. That's on the technical interview front. And then there's a fourth kind of interview, which is either case study or puzzle. So this is to test your general problem solving skills. So consulting companies typically do a case study led interview where they give you a case study. It can be a guesstimate or it can be a market entry kind of case. So this is to identify thinking on your feet and how analytical you are. For all these four type of interviews, there are standard preparation that needs to be done, and I will just quickly cover those. Just before I go into that, I want to give you a brief overview on the process of preparing for interviews. So you first, if whenever you are sitting for an interview for any company, you need to make sure that you have read about the company and the role, because you should not be in a position where you sit for the interview for the company and you don't know what the company does or where all are they present, what are their different businesses, and you don't know what the job exactly entails. So this is very, very crucial. What sometimes might happen is, because you're sitting for so many interviews in placement or internship season, that people tend to skip on this. Make sure you always read about the company and the role before your interview. Otherwise you could land up in a very awkward situation. The second is you should discuss with seniors who've interviewed or who have gotten offers there, because these people will be able to tell you some different nuances about each company's interviewing style. Each company has, so for example, consulting companies do case-led interviews. Other coding companies might ask you to write a piece of code on paper in the interview. FMCG companies might ask you some supply chain questions, right? So you need to know these nuances, which is why discussing with seniors and other people who've interviewed for these roles becomes very important. And there will be cases where a new company is coming on campus, so people don't know and nobody's interviewed for that before. In that case, you can do your research online. Forums like Glassdoor have a lot of reviews of people telling exactly what their interview process was like and what kind of questions were asked. So doing this background research becomes very important for anybody who's sitting for an interview. Um, there are some standard questions in HR, in puzzles, in case studies, and there are some standard questions which you should know even in your technical interview rounds. So you can prepare for these beforehand. And what do I mean by prepare? I'll explain in the next slide. But the last thing, and which is the most important thing, is that you need to practice. However, unlike JE or unlike any other competitive exam where you can just write and when you can just problem solve and do a piece of math and get to it, interviews are not like that. Interviews require you to do mock practice interviews, because a lot of it depends on your communication and the way you're able to structure your thoughts and present it to another individual. That matters a lot in interviews, and that means you have to practice it before you can perfect it and give a better interview than you would have otherwise. So let's go to each type of these interviews and what kind of questions are there and what kind of preparation is required. Let's start with the HR and the fit interview. For HR interviews, there are various resources online and on DC++ and on with your friend circle and your senior batches also. There are documents which have 100 plus questions which cover all possible HR questions, right? Any possible HR question that you can think of is already there. You need to go through all of them and have a short answer prepared for each of them. What I did, which helped me a lot, was I first wrote down all my answers, like on pen and paper or on a Word document. I went through each question and wrote down the answer to it, and then I practiced speaking it. So it also helped me structure, because when you're speaking something, you have a tendency to either be too short or too long or wander about a bit. So you might not exactly say what you've written down, but once you've written it down, you have the pointers which you need to explain, and then you practice it by saying it. Typically, the three most important questions which will come in the HR interview or the fit interview is your story and background. So what have you done till now? And this question is very, very critical because the first question is, can you walk me through your resume? Right? And the answer to that needs to be a very crisp and precise 1 minute answer where you're giving information not just about your personal background, but about your work background, about what you've done in campus, what kind of experiences have been definitive for you, and why are you applying for this role, and how will it help you, and how will you be a good fit. So this your story and background needs to be a very crisp 1 minute answer. What a piece of advice which really helped me in this was you need to have cutoffs so that 1 minute can't be a very block 1 minute. So if the interviewer by any chance cuts you off at 30 seconds, in that first 30 seconds, you need to be able to give some valid, good information to the interviewer. Suppose he cuts you off at 45 seconds. So in that 45 seconds, you should have given him some information. If he lets you speak, then it should be a 1 minute thing, right? So this is how you should structure it. What it means is that you cannot just do it on the fly. You have to prepare for it. You have to write it down exactly. You have to speak it again and again and again, and you have to time yourself. You have to see when the 30-minute marker is hit, at which position in your story are you? Are you still telling them about your childhood and about your 11th, 12th grade activities? Or have you told them about the activities or the position of responsibility or the various different competitions you've taken part of in IIT Bombay, right? So you need to chronologically start from the most immediate things. Okay, I am from IIT Bombay. In this in so and so batch, over the course of last 2-3 years, I've done X, Y, Z. Before this, I was based in say Indore. I went to a central CBSE school where I did XYZ activities. I really enjoy skating as a physical activity, and I like reading a lot. XYZ is my favorite author, right? So this has to be the 1 minute background information. The second question, which becomes very important, is why do you want to join this role? You have to have a very clear answer to why do you want to join this role, because that's the first thing that the interviewer is going to check. And what he's trying to check, he or she is trying to check from this question, is your level of interest in this role. If you're applying to 50 roles, you need to have 50 different answers for this. But you need to have this answer because otherwise, from the interviewer's point of view, you become a not very serious candidate. And the last one is, why are you a good fit for this role? When I say, so no interviewer will ask you this question directly, or maybe sometimes they might. But what you have to consistently communicate is that you have developed a skill set which is aligned with the role, and you will be able to contribute to that organization meaningfully. Every interview is a sort of sales pitch for yourself, especially the HR round, where you have a very good chance of explaining why you will be best suited for this role. So this is what you need to cover. Again, I will not go into very specific details on how you should structure each of these answers. A lot of this information is available online, but I can obviously guide you in case you have further questions. Okay, the second one is the stress test. Stress test is, like I had mentioned, it is just a situation where the interviewer is asking you back-to-back questions, right? For example, the first thing you need to do for a stress test is you need to actively identify that, okay, the interviewer has now switched modes and they have entered a stress testing mode, and they want to see how I perform in this kind of environment. The key is that you have to be calm, you have to be polite, and you have to meaningfully, logically defend your answers. Take, for example, I did a case study in a consulting interview, and I told him, I calculated my answer and I told him. And then the interviewer says, okay, are you sure about your answer? Or can you do another calculation for me in the next 2 minutes? Is this answer even meaningful? I think you're extremely wrong. And he just has this line of questioning back to back without giving me enough time and space to say things. So in that kind of scenario, you need to try and consistently put your point across. And you will say, yes, I have done my calculation. However, since you've raised it, I will double check it. I've checked it. It is accurate to the best of my understanding. However, if I've missed something, please do let me know. So you have to be calm and polite in this conversation, because this is the kind of situation you might also face in work. There might be a situation where your manager is very stressed and they keep on badgering you, but you need to be calm and polite through this, and you have to logically defend your answers. You cannot, just because the interviewer is saying that this is wrong, you don't just say, okay, this is wrong. You defend your answer, you double check, you defend your answer, and then you say, okay, this is the best I know. Please do explain to me if I've missed something. That is the best way to also create an open dialogue in an interview. The third one, the technical kind of interviews. A lot of the technical interview prep is just reading and preparing for different type of those. Each type of technical interview has its own preparation. So there will be quantitative questions which typically come in interviews. You have to actually solve them, because what they're testing is how fast are you able to solve these questions in an interview. Do you take a full minute or do you take 30 seconds? Everyone who is interviewing will be able to solve these questions, but it's also about how accurately and how fast are you able to solve these. Similarly, for FMCG companies, for say a civil engineering company, there will be its own technical set of things that you need to prepare, and that a lot of it will also come from discussions with interviews. They will be discussion with seniors for each type of interview. They will be able to guide you on that. On case studies and puzzles. So this is something that I can tell you with a little more detail about, because this is very common. This is not just for some specific type of companies. This is for a lot of companies. So for case studies, there are mock case study groups that people make, and they refer to Victor Cheng's material, which is the starting point, and then you build up from there. For solving puzzles, these puzzles can be just brain teasers or probability based questions. If you toss a coin, if you have 3 coins, you toss them 5 times, what is the probability of you getting XYZ? Or there are 100 light bulbs in a room. There are 100 people go one after another and switch the light bulb status. So what is the final light bulb status? These are the type of questions I'm talking about when I mean case study and puzzles. There are lists of these available. Again, a lot of it is online, a lot of it is with the student community. And if you're not able to find it, please do let me know. I will share whatever material I have. It's quite easily accessible. And the idea is that you have to practice these not just on a pen and paper, but also as a mock interview. So you have to do technical mock interview rounds, so that you ensure that you know these before you enter an interview room. So this is a very brief background on how to prepare for different kind of interviews. I'm sure you guys will have questions. I will take it up at the end of the session, and we can deep dive into each of these or one of these if a lot of people have questions about those. The next thing which I want to do is discuss about group discussions. Quite a few companies hold group discussions. I'll quickly tell you what a group discussion is. So they break. So this is a round which happens before interviews and maybe after a test if they have a test. So they have a test, then they have a resume shortlisting, then they have a group discussion, and then they have the final interview rounds. So group discussions, they segregate the shortlisted candidates into groups of 5, 7, 10, and each of them, like each group is put into a room. Each group is given a topic of discussion, and the group has to discuss the topic and come to a meaningful conclusion. For example, a group discussion topic could be, what do you think about government's COVID response in India? Have they done a good job of it? What could they have done better? This could be a group discussion topic. Another group discussion topic could be something very specific to the company. So for example, if you're giving a HUL study, HUL or ITC GD session, then they might ask you that you are the owner of a factory, manufacturing factory which works for HUL, and you were not able to meet your targets of production. You were supposed to produce 100 soaps and you were only able to produce 10. Why? Now discuss how to go ahead and solve this problem, right? So this could be a group discussion topic. Okay, so I've covered the first point here. What are the different group discussion styles? So you should also know that each company has a different GD style. For example, a Schlumberger GD will be very different from a HUL GD. The idea is to know what you're getting into before you go into that room. So again, speaking to your seniors and having those discussions beforehand will be very tremendously helpful. It can be based on a technical question or could be a general knowledge question, and it could also be a situational question, giving you a situation that your manager is unwell, you need to authorize something, but you don't have the legal right to authorize the invoicing of some products that have been bought. What do you do in that situation? So the key to GDs is to make sure that you voice your opinion and bring the group to a consensus. The first thing that you should remember is don't rush. A lot of people try and be the first person to start speaking in the GD. That is not required. You might not get as many extra brownie points for that as you think. You don't need to rush. You will be given a topic, you will be given a minute or two to think about it. Take your time. If you feel that you don't know enough about this topic and you want to hear other people speak, give it some time. Build your opinion based either on data that you already know or from the things that you're hearing in the group, and then meaningfully contribute to the JD. If you It is better to wait and then answer or then put your point of view rather than just be the first one to blabber a point of view which is not even aligned. The second thing you should do is listen closely. Listen very, very closely to what other people are saying. A group discussion is not just you trying to make a point and win the discussion. It is you listening to other people's point. And if they make a good point, you can also be convinced. Being convinced by somebody else's point is not a negative thing. It is a good thing. For example, if I say that no, I think India's COVID response strategy has not been good at all, and then somebody else in the discussion room says that no, states some facts about India's low mortality rate, India's low rate of infection spread has been quite low, and that is information that I didn't previously know. I can go back and say, hey, I think XYZ has made very interesting points, and keeping this in mind, we might be blanket saying that India's COVID response strategy has been bad could be a wrong in very prejudiced point to make. We should also consider his points. He's made some good points, right? So you listen closely and build on those points that other people have made. Most successful candidates are able to bring the group together and acknowledge everyone's points. It is best, the ideal case would be the whole group comes to a consensus that we believe as a group that India has a good COVID response strategy or a bad COVID response strategy. But more often than not, you will see that it's very difficult to bring a group to a consensus in 20, 25 or 30 minutes. So what needs to be done in that case is you need to highlight that the group has a conflicted view. There have been strong points from both sides of the argument. The pro side has said XYZ, the con side has said ABC, and we will still need to further discuss to come to a consensus. So this could be a powerful ending. People who are able to summarize the GD well and who are able to meaningfully acknowledge everyone's points, those are the people who kind of stand out in a JD. What you should also be cognizant of is the time. Sometimes it's very easy to lose track of time as the group discussion keeps going on and on. So you need to be mindful of that, because that gives you an opportunity to be the person who's summarizing and bringing the group together at the end. So this is something, these are three key things which you should take care of while preparing for group discussions. So this is what you should do in the group discussion itself. What can you do before the group discussion to prepare? Read. Read as much as you can about general things which are happening. Read technical questions that might come your way. Read about situational things at work. And this has to be a company specific reading. It can't be a blanket reading. So situation related to a FMCG company, or situations related to a coding company. So things like these are something you should prepare beforehand, and then you should do a general knowledge preparation. These levers will help you perform much better in group discussions. Okay, this is a very interesting section, I believe, and this is on how to overcome your interview anxiety. First of all, acknowledge that this is something which is happening with everyone, not just you. There is no single person who is going into an interview and who's not worried or who's not anxious. So this is definitely not just happening with you. This is happening with everyone. What can you do to make sure that you don't let this inhibit your interview performance? First thing is identify why this is happening. And this is a fairly easy step. Interviews are scary, everyone wants to give their best, and everyone wants to get that job or internship offer, and that can be a very stressful environment and creates anxiety. But remember that anxiety only pulls you down. A thing which has worked very well for me, and I've seen other people also use it, is using the so what technique. In life, a lot of situations where you're very anxious can be dealt with a so what. Imagine you're in an interview, you did your best, and you still didn't get the offer. So what? Yes, momentarily it will feel very, very bad. This might be something that you really wanted to do, but does it mean that your life has come to an end? No. Does it mean that you cannot go and interview for the same company 2 years down the line? Absolutely not. You can again go and apply for the company if being with that company matters so much. What is the worst possible thing if you fail this interview? And more often than not, the answer is that nothing. It's not, I'm not losing my life. Everyone I know is safe. I am safe. I have a good life. I have good opportunities. I've graduated from a good college, or I am studying in a very good college right now, and I will get opportunities. I might have done something which didn't lead me to get the offer, or there might be better people than me who are more suited to the role. At the end of the day, not getting a placement or an interview of or a internship offer is not the end of the world. And just realizing this thing becomes very powerful in dealing with your anxiety. Because as you go into that interview room to give that interview, you need to be calm and you need to be focused on what is happening then and there. What is the conversation? What is the question that is being asked? Rather than think of think of bad things that could happen, right? And this is something that a lot of us have a tendency to do, is just keep on thinking about what is the bad thing that could happen. So you need to just ask yourself these questions before you enter the interview room. So what? So what if I don't get this offer? I can still figure things out. It is not the end of the world. And you use this to deal with your anxiety. The second thing which you should do is watch good interview samples. Every type of interview that you can think of has good samples on YouTube. It has a lot of cases, they even have samples where the interviewer pauses and explains why something that the candidate said was good or was bad. Listen to these interviews, because the key is that you can only emulate things which you have seen. Theoretically, somebody telling you that, hey, in an interview you should be calm, focused, and you should listen very carefully to what the interviewer is saying, is something different. And you seeing it audio in an audio visual setup is something different. See as many good interviews as you can, because then you can emulate those. You can then, you know you know what is good to do in an interview and what is bad to do in an interview. So this will help you practice. The last thing is practice with others, but more importantly you need to practice with yourself. I'm sure all of you will give a lot of mock interviews. Your roommates, your wingmates, your friends and other people who are preparing, they will help you out, you will help other people out. thing up One thing which people miss out is that it's also equally important to practice with yourself. Record your answers, hear back your answers. When we speak something, we don't really hear it, we are just speaking. So if you record your answers and listen to it, then you become much more aware of what are your tendencies. Are you using some filler words? Are you using very long sentences? Is your tonality okay? So record your answers and then listen back to yourself. You can also, and you should also, do mirror interviews. Just talk in front of a mirror. Be comfortable looking another individual in their face and talking. So just doing these kind of activities on your own can also help you a lot. This is a step which usually people miss out on. It might sound silly, and even when you do it, it might feel silly, but go ahead and do it. Trust me, it will have really exponential returns. You need to be able to hear yourself and see yourself how you're behaving in an interview, so that you know what to change or whether you have to improve on something. Unless you do this, you will not be able to identify what is going well and what is going wrong. The next thing in the last section is on improving your communication techniques. So one thing which I always keep telling candidates who even interview for Kearney and in our buddy sessions with them is that every interview is a two-way conversation. Every interview is you getting to know the interviewer and the interviewer getting to know you. You also have the chance to ask questions at the end of each interview. And the idea is to just do your best, just to make sure that the interviewer and or the interview panel know you for who you are, and you're able to give extremely good feedback on different points that they might raise. It's a communication. Interview is not just one-sided, and you need to remember this. What this means is that you have to also listen. You have to build up on the conversation with them, not just keep saying points which are irrelevant. For example, if the interviewer says, I'm so sorry, I got very late for this interview. My internet was not working, right? That's a very small piece of information which you can use to engage in conversation. Say, hey, yes, I understand work from home has been very difficult for everyone. Internet connectivity has also taken a load, especially because people are not using office networks and are using home networks, and hence they are more strained. So now in this process, what you've done is you've established a small talk with them, and you then also give them room to be at ease, and you have also shown that you're aware of okay why such a particular thing is happening. You were also able to explain that okay, yes, I understand internet at home is being a problem because of this logical reason. And these kind of small conversations make the interview process more relaxed for you and for the interviewer. Every interviewer is probably talking to 10-15 candidates in that day. How do you stand out of those 10-15 candidates? If you can just do these small conversational aspects which make the interviewer feel comfortable, that is very important. On communication, you need to understand that communication is not just verbal. It's not just about the things we say. It's also non-verbal. Something as simple as just looking at the interviewer when you're speaking with them versus looking down at your table or at your piece of paper makes a lot of difference. If you're speaking to someone, face them and speak to them directly. Don't look down or don't shy away. You and whenever you're speaking to someone, lean forward to them, don't sit back, because even in a virtual interview it's very easy to see if you are leaning back and are disinterested, or if you're leaning forward and you're interested in the conversation and are engaged, listen very closely. Make sure that your hands are in the right place. You're not just tying your hands together and just sitting in a corner with that emotion, but you are able to use your hands to communicate. So again, a lot of non-verbal communication is something that you can read up on. This is also this is also something that you can improve by doing the mirror interview sessions with yourself, because then you'll be able to see how you look and what you do and what you say. The last one is on avoiding filler words. This is something that even I am working on right now. Whenever you're speaking with someone, we have a tendency of using these filler words. They are like, okay, so I was thinking X, Y, Z. And basically, what I mean to say is, I'm a good person. I'm a hard worker. Things like these. These filler words dilute your conversation. If you're saying something, take some time and say the whole sentence and try to avoid filler words as much as possible. This is something you will learn only after a lot of practice, but you will not be able to change overnight. It will take time, and that's okay. You just need to try and be better at it. You don't need to immediately change 100% and only then you'll have a good interview. That's completely untrue. You can still have a good interview even if you're using filler words. Just try it. Just try to make sure that you're not using as many filler words as you were earlier. Coming to the three key takeaways. One, be humble, eager to listen, and be involved. A lot of your communication will improve if you are paying attention to what the other person is speaking. Because when you hear the other person, you respond to them in an engaged manner rather than a disengaged manner. Second one is very important because I think this is something we all miss out on. You can pause. You can pause before you speak. You can think exactly what you want to say, and you can structure your thoughts before you speak it. Why is this important? Is because when you're in an interview, the way time moves for you is slightly different. You feel that you have stayed quiet for a very long time. However, that's not true. You can actually wait for maybe more 10, 20 seconds before you spoke, and even that would be okay. This is something that you will be able to fix when you are recording yourself. Because when you record yourself, you will see that I could have waited for 20 seconds more here and then give a more structured answer to whatever somebody was asking. So pause before you speak. The third and the final piece of advice is on small talk. One of the first things that I mentioned when we came to this slide was using small talk and talking to your interviewer so that they also feel like it's a conversation. Typically, all interviewers, in every time that you're sitting in an interview room, you're being tested. You're being tested on the airport test. What it essentially means is, if I was stuck at an airport overnight because some flight cancelled and I had to be stuck with this person at the airport, would I enjoy it? Would I have something to talk about? Would it be a comfortable situation? If I were stuck somewhere, I couldn't get out of there, and the only person I could talk to is this person, the candidate that I'm interviewing, would I be able to be happy in that situation? That's the airport test. So you can use professional small talk to very subtly communicate that you are also an engaged listener. You can speak things outside of the interview, and you're treating them as human beings rather than just your interviewer. So these are the three things which can help improve your communication technique, especially in an interview setting. This is the last thing that I want to cover, but for me, I think this is the most important message that each of you should take away right now, is that remember that whichever company has shortlisted you based on your resume, based on some test. Maybe 200, 300 people applied and 12 people are shortlisted, right? You have already made it so far. You have made it so far because they think that you are a good fit. The interviewer who is coming there wants to know you. They already like you. Otherwise, you wouldn't even have a chance to interview with them. The interview is not just them getting to know you better, but also you getting to know them better. So ask them questions. Ask them how a day in their life looks like. Ask them why they chose to get into this company or this role, or ask them what their future plans are. These kind of things will also be important to you when you're making a decision on which company to join finally. So again, stressing this point because this cannot be stressed enough. If you've been shortlisted for a company and if you're sitting for an interview, it's because they already like you. If they didn't like you, if you weren't going to make it, they wouldn't shortlist you. Since you're already there, you have a chance to explain your side of the story, to show them how good you are, and you should leverage this opportunity to the best of your abilities. So this is all I had from my side, and I will quickly open up the forum for a Q&A session. If there are any questions about the interview thing, I think I see a lot of questions on the chat forum. One second, let me quickly see this. So yes, Karthik, I will circulate the slides with you. I can share the slides with Arashi and the team, and then they can share it with you. How to concise thoughts. So you can, one way to make sure that your thoughts are concise and to the point rather than rambling all over the place is to pause. Suppose you asked a question which is something that you don't know and you just vaguely know about it. For example, the spread of coronavirus. You vaguely read that there is a R square number which needs to be checked. Community transmission. How do we check if the community is in community? You have vague ideas about it. Pause, decide what you want to speak, that okay, I know XYZ, and the last thing can be, but I'd like to know more, and you seem to know something about it. Why would you could you please also explain me more about this thing? So being concise is about just taking a pause. And also, one of the things which help is in HR kind of interviews is to use the STAR methodology. I will share the link of that with along with the PPT. What it essentially means is when you're describing any situation uh, to a HR answer, to HR question, you can use the STAR methodology, which is situation, what did you do, which is the task, I think, and then the action, what was the result of it, and so on and so forth. So it's a very standard way of making sure that you cover all parts of your answer in a concise manner. Okay. How frequently can you ask the interviewer for some time to think about a topic? That depends on each type of interview. So in HR interview, if you reach a difficult question, for example, tell me a time where you failed and how did you tackle that? That might be a new question for you. You might not have prepared for that. So you can ask, you can say, hey, can I take a minute to just structure my thoughts? I would like to think this answer through. And that's a very okay thing to say. So in an HR interview, when you face difficult questions, you can ask for time. In a consulting interview, which is a case study based interview, you are encouraged to ask for time. That every time you've discussed the problem statement, you are encouraged to take a minute, structure your thoughts, and then give the answer or the next step. Don't just randomly speak the first thing that comes into your mind. But if you are in, say, a technical interview where you're expected to already know the answer, something as simple as I was in civil engineering, right? So something as simple as a force equation, a force and reaction equation. I should know this instantly. In those cases, I cannot ask for some time. So whenever you need to think of a topic and it's valid, you can ask for time. Group task, how to tackle them. I'm slightly unfamiliar with what group tasks are because this was not there in our interview season, both placement and internship. So maybe if the team, Arushi, Kirti, if you could explain what a group task is, maybe I could answer this question better. And yes, this is all we had in the chat box. The forum is open. Anyone wants to ask any further questions, please do. This is the time for you to ask. I would encourage everyone to take this time to ask as many questions as you want. Okay. Um, Archana, why don't you quickly explain on the group task? I think you have some view on that.
So I think this question has come from, well, I don't need the name, but in case you need any more clarification, you can please open up your mic and speak to me. So the group task, basically, what I understand you're referring to is, at a certain time in the selection process itself, the group task is given. And what the company observes is like, the recruiter wants to know how do you actually carry out the task in a group setting. So what the interviewers or the recruiters basically are observing you on is how are you performing, collaborating with the team, and how are you defining the boundaries of your work and also taking the other people into the group of the into the sequence of the working. Because in a group task, let's see if they make you ask you to make a building out of cards, or there is a task given that these particular things have to be moved from here to here. Let's see, for example, the whole group has to use certain sticks or kind of a things, pallet bamboo kind of sticks, let's see, half cut bamboo sticks, and you have to take the marbles from one place to another place. So there are marbles on the one end of the side, and the other end of the line you have to drop all the marbles into a bucket. So I'm giving you just a small example. You are not supposed to be doing this alone, it is with the group. So there are, let's say, 5 6 people who are together, and how you have to come to consensus on what will be the method followed. Normally in these cases, that itself takes a lot of time. So how do you come to a consensus? How do you convince the group? Whether you get convinced by the best of the activity. Okay, there's a lot of sound here. Okay. And then how, when at the end of it, how much of the task you have accomplished as a group. So what we as a company or as a recruiter are observing is how much involved you are, how much thinking you do, or do you leave it all to the other people in the group to think and do and you just follow, or are you also involved in understanding, contributing, thinking? Some people may be very quiet people, very introvert, they may not be very good with language also, but when it comes to performing the task and delivering the task, they are the real good workers. They focus on the work, they focus on the methodology, and they do it. And when you find some other people in the group not doing it as good as they should be doing, then how do you get them aligned, how do you talk to them? So the behavioral aspects also come into it. So it's far more closer to the ground reality that we would see you in the company than just the group discussion or the interview. So therefore the group task become important. Now what is your real nature will not, or usually come up there. So the best preparation is, by your real nature you should be a group person, you should be a considerate person, you should be a person who involves everybody. If you're preparing for it, you reflect over what you truly are and try to get aligned with what the company wants it, because the rest of the life is working in a group in the organization. So those are the aspects that you have to understand in the group task. Now if you have any specific question or explanation or query around this, please ask me specifically.
Uh,
Anything more? Yeah.
yes, ma'am. Hello, ma'am.
Yeah,
Uh,
say.
Ma'am, is it necessary to come to a consensus at the end of the group task?
See, when it is group task, let's say you're given 30 minutes time and you got to perform the task. And suppose all the people are coming up to a conclusion and starting to do it. You have your point of view. Either you get convinced or you are arguing or putting up your point. It may be better. Sometimes, you think, everybody thinks that way, that what idea I am giving is the best idea. But if you see that out of the 10 people, the other 7 are not into the thing, only one person maybe. So either two of you together get it done. Or if you can't get the whole group convinced, please get convinced, but get the work done. Because within 30 minutes, if the work is not done, then you all have failed as a group, no? So it is basically, observing how good you would be to ensure that the work is done. Sometimes you may be a very extraordinary, brilliant person, and your idea may be very great. But if you have not been able to convince the group that this is the best possible way of doing it, at least move with the group and get the work done. It's
Uh,
some, I call it like this. Maybe if the whole group is not comfortable or not able to appreciate that, we should be driving the we should be moving by the helicopter, go by a gadi, it is all right, but get the work done. So that is where they will test you, that yes, you had a great idea. When you tried to convince it, if it didn't happen for whatever reason, at least you got the work done. You cooperated with the group. It is not that you got left out with the group, because we project it into the organization setup and then see it like that same way. In the organizations, not everybody will be as smart as you. So either you should have the ability to get the work moving as per your ways, convincing the entire group, or at least become aligned with the group. So this is how we will see that you will function in the organizations.
okay. Thank you.
Welcome. Yes. So more questions, and I will encourage all of you to ask as many possible questions, as many nuances and details about it as possible.
So, question that we have is, what do you first say when you enter the interview room? Whatever time of day it is, you say good morning or good afternoon or good evening,
Hmm.
and typically you just take a seat, or the most likely the interviewer will say, please take a seat, and then you take a seat. However, now that you are going to be in a virtual setup, and my understanding is that all interviews will happen over Teams or WebEx, what you should say is, hi, good morning, good afternoon, really nice to be here, I hope you're doing well, I hope you and your family are staying safe in during these times. That would be a good start. Just think of how you might speak to uh, a, a friend that you knew a while back but haven't spoken to them. So you would just ask them about how they've kept, right, how they are doing, and hope that everything's okay with them. That should be a good start. um, the other question is on, what is the best approach if you don't know the answer of a question? So, what I have typically used, and there might be differing views on that, whenever I don't know the answer to a question, first of all, try answering the question. You might not. Don't just say that I don't know the answer to the question, right? Suppose somebody's asked you a technical question, try answering the question to the best of your abilities, but acknowledge that I might not know the question, know the answer to this perfectly. If you could help me understand what more I could say to complete the answer, or if you could just help me understand what you're looking for exactly, that could be it. When you don't know the answer to the question, it should also be that you have checked the understanding of the question first. So somebody asked you a question, right? What do you think about RBI reducing the repo rate? And you don't know what the repo rate is. So ask them, okay, can you help me understand better what the repo rate is? And then you go ahead and answer it. Okay. So make sure that make sure that you know exactly what the question is before you think that you don't know the answer. Try attempting the question and answering it to the best of your abilities. Caveat it and say that I might not know the best, I might not know the perfect answer. Please do let me know your thoughts on this. Maybe you could help me understand the question a little bit better, or just you don't need to say that I don't know. The interviewer will pick up on that. You don't need to explicitly say that you don't know. Okay. How to answer the question, dream job question when interviewing for a startup? Okay. So when you're interviewing for a startup, you have to have very strong reasons of why you want to join a startup. And as most of you will realize when you're doing preparation for a startup, is that this is a very hands-on role. There is no other job which teaches you more on the job than a startup role. You have to do everything on your own. Things are not easy. It's not a cushy job. You have to think, you have to execute, you have to do the function of 5 people. One person has to do the function of 5 different people. So the answer to the question of why what's the dream job when you're interviewing for a startup should be that I want a job which gives me the flexibility to learn on the job. I want to be part of the action. I want to make sure that every day I'm doing something, things on those lines. However, it needs to be nuanced with why that particular startup industry or why that particular startup itself. uh, Highly unlikely that people ask you directly what your dream job is, but they will ask you what kind of jobs are you looking for or why would you want to join a startup. So you should have a strong answer for that based on what you've read about the startup world, what you've read about the startup industry and that particular company itself. So the how to concise thoughts. I think we covered this earlier, but I will just recap quickly. To concise thoughts, take a pause, structure your thoughts, then say something. If you're not sure what to say, ask them for a minute. And the most important thing is to maybe follow a framework, the STAR methodology. I will send it over. You can also Google it. It helps you structure the answer quite well. You don't want to go for a PhD, and how do you convince them, the interviewer, in a polite manner? So if the interviewer is asking you why you're not going for a PhD, if you don't want to go for a PhD, there has to be some reason behind it, right? That I have spent 4 + 2 years in studying. I want to do a job, get more real world or industry experience. I want to understand. I want to utilize the knowledge that I've developed till now to go to actually execute and do something rather than just do a PhD. And you can also say that PhD is a very long-term commitment, and I'm not ready for that at the moment. I might look into it later. So whatever your reasons are for not wanting to go for a PhD, say that, and that should be sufficient. If the interviewer is still pushing you and saying that no, you should go for a PhD, it's a good thing, say that I am not very convinced on that at the moment based on my understanding. This is something that I will think on later, but at the moment I'm looking to apply for a job in the industry. How to answer the question, do you have any other offers? If you have another offer. So at least and correct me here, Kirti and Arushi, if this has changed. In the interview, in the internship and placement season, you typically don't get to apply for another job if you already have an offer, right? So if somebody is asking you, do you have any other offers, that question itself might not come up. However, if that does come up, you should be transparent, because it's not good if the interviewer finds out later that you had another offer, and they will find out. Trust me, they will find out. You don't lie in your interview. If they ask a question and you have another offer, say that yes, I have another offer. Um, um, don't disclose the firm's name. Say I can't disclose the firm's name based on the confidentiality agreement. And say that, however, I'm still applying for this role with your company because I'm interested, and this seems like seems like a good fit, and hence I'm in this interview, right? That should cover it. Sometimes GDs become a fish market. Not everyone is able to speak up. So how to approach this situation? Also, sometimes the topic which you want to mention are already, yes. So yes, GDs typically do become a very fish market like situation. Being loud, a bit loud, not screaming, but slightly raising your voice helps you kind of get in a wedge and speak. What you can do, especially if somebody has mentioned the point that you wanted to make, is follow up on that. So for example, I can say, if Kirti mentioned a point that I wanted to speak in the GD, and I want to then add to it, I can say, so Kirti raised a very valid point of XYZ. Additionally, I think ABC, and I thoroughly believe that we should do XYZ, right? So that is a good add-on. and your add-on is still counted. However, yes, it is good if you can add to the point rather than just recapping it. So that would help. Please summarize on how to introduce yourself. Introducing yourself needs to be a 1 minute answer. It needs to have what have you done till now, and starting in a descending chronological order. So what most recently, what did you do in your IIT days? Before that, what were you doing? What are your interests and why? What are the things that you've learned over the years, or the skill set that you have developed which will make you a good fit for the job? So that's how you should introduce yourself. Okay, yes, so people have PPOs and they can still sit for interviews. Yes, so you can say that during, and more often than not, people who have PPOs typically write on their resume that, or even if they've gotten the PPO later, you can very clearly say that yes, I have a pre-placement offer from XYZ. And I have still applied for interviewing with other companies because I believe that this would be a slightly better fit. So this is all that I had from my end. Any other questions? If anyone has, okay, I just saw the time. We might have overrun. So thank you everyone for joining in today. I hope we were able to answer your questions to the best of our abilities. Like I had mentioned earlier, we will circulate the PPT. I will share the STAR methodology link, and I will. The PPT also has my email address. If any of you have follow-up questions, please do feel free to reach out. I'm there to guide you as much as I can, and all the very best for your interviews, both for the internship and for the placements.
Good. Thanks. Kirti, you have anything? Sorry.
No,
Just,
please continue.
yes, Kirti, go ahead. Go ahead. You say, I will pitch in later.
Thank you for the wonderful session, ma'am. It was really helpful. Ma'am, you can add anything if you want to, Archana, ma'am.
So I said, I think the group has found this session very meaningful. That's very kind of Shievani also to prepare this and then be available to us with the YUV Coaching. Thank you so much, Shievani. We have the series of the webinars, as you may be knowing. There was the series of webinars that we had planned for career planning. This is one of them. And the next that we pick up is on how to address fear and anxiety. That's specifically about that, not just for the interviews, but just in general in life and for any other aspects. Because I remember when I filtered all the questions before starting this intervention, there were questions like when we feel very, we know everything, but in front of the interview panel or where I'm supposed to speak, I'm not able to express. Something happens to me. I feel very nervous. I know the answer, but I'm not able to mention. So these kind of things had also come up. So I thought probably I will take the whole session on how do you address fear, anxiety, or any kind of thing like that inhibits your 100% expression. So that's one session we will take. We will also take one session on emotional intelligence that will enable you not just for the interviews or career planning, but also for generally in life. Because if you see all the people who are successful in their profession or life or on job, in addition to being intelligent on an IQ level, what we say, the EQ matters a lot. What is your emotional quotient? What is the emotional intelligence level that you have? And that in a layman's language, you can correlate it to wisdom, basically. So that will be another session that we will plan out around this. So I would encourage that if you be in those, you will continuously keep getting content that will help you face your entire placement season. And once you're through, last somewhere around January, February, how Kirti has suggested, we would be taking session around how do you make the move from campus to corporate. So there is a mental shift and an emotional shift that will be required at that stage. We will cover that as well. So this is around preparation. One bit that I would want to add into this is you can apply it not only for interviews, but for any other space also, is what is the energy you carry. Okay. So when you're facing an interview, when you want to go there and you go with a lot of nervousness, with kind of energy of fear, the energy of reduction, energy of inhibition, that's not good for you. You go with an energy of excitement, energy of looking into what it is going to be like, and with ease and comfort. Now the whole challenge is, how do you get into that space of energy? So what you can do is, these are small mental emotional techniques, is that you think of something that gives you that kind of energy. So let's see, if you have a pet, okay, and whenever you are with the pet, you have an energy of ease, convenience. Then going there, before you go there, or maybe a little while earlier, just focus yourself in that space. Mentally, nobody can stop you of thinking what you want to think. Think of those things which will keep you in the energy space which is on a higher side. So when you enter the room, you're bringing in the energy which is more positive, okay, automatically. And the whole space of the interview will change then. Because if you see that in the interview panel, let's see, I am taking the interview. If I am sitting here with 5 other people, one person had come, there was some kind of energy dealing, interacting with him and all. Now he has moved out. The split second between, or the time between his going and the you coming in, there is not much a gap, there's a small gap. So this energy shift has to happen. Now, how does that happen? Either, let's say, the panel took a laughter break or something. So there is a change. We had some tea and all, there is a change. But when we're calling people one after the other, when you come in and you bring in a bright face, we all shifted. As an interview panel and all, we shifted. And then we start talking to, okay, this person looks more pleasant. Okay. So that now you don't put it as a burden on yourself. You just see that you get into the space of your comfort and energies, and that's what you will bring in. And then the whole space of interview will start like that. So the technique that Shievani said, one, you don't think of, you think of, so what? Ho gaya, theek hai, good and fine. So there are phrases like that. If you see that is, if you get what you want, it's good. If you don't get what you want, maybe you're going to get better, or maybe it's not good for you. So you believe in those areas and then move. So you got to move with so what, and you got to be thinking of, either think of your mother, think of your pet, think of your God, think of whatever gives you in a positive space of energy, even if it's a beachside look. You had a holiday in Goa that was fantastic and gave you good energy. Bring that thought in your mind. So your energies automatically will change that. You will be in a happy mode when you go there. So that will help you combat all that. And when you're faced with the question saying, introduce yourself or tell us something about yourself, that's the space you use in your advantage. Many a time people will open up the interview like that. Okay, so help us know you better. Okay? Tell something about you. You tell things like how Shievani had mentioned, chronologically mention those things which are very important from the perspective of the interviewer. So if I am there to recruit you for my company, I would want to see, what am I here sitting for? Seeing what are you? I have already made this decision that you are a good student. That's why I have called you into the interview. I have no doubt about your hard work. I have done that first level of selection. Now I want to know you as a person and see whether you fit it. So my thing is to know, what are your priorities in life? Are you clear about your life aspects? Do you have any emotional hiccups? Are you a clear thinking person who thinks through clearly? Are you okay communicating? Are you okay connecting with people? Can you tolerate nonsenses of people? Can you tolerate conflicts? Can you tolerate any overpowering aspect on you, and how do you manage that? How do you set about that? Because these are the things you will come across in organization. So interview, we're focusing on there, and then all those critical incidents that I may want to inquire from your life to know you better will come from a lot of it. How do you introduce yourself? So if you introduce yourself, you try and bring out those important points that show good about you, and where you are comfortable expanding yourself, talking about yourself, and then that's how you position and brand. A lot of it will come up in the body language, in the comfort level, in the energy, and the way you will talk. The language of English and Hindi doesn't matter much to us. I see that many people have come up from places you may not be very comfortable expressing yourself in English. It is all right. See, if I'm hiring you for a job that requires English and you are a content writer, only then I will disqualify you for that. But if I'm hiring you for your mental abilities, for some app development, for technicalities, for anything like that, that's a very secondary thing for me. So then I will not look much bother about your English. I will bother about the IQ, the technology, the ability that you can bring for me, the analytical ability, the way the critical thinking you bring in. So that becomes more important for me. So don't ever bother about your English and presentation and this and that. You can shift over the language and talk yourself comfortably, because you are applying for a job that requires that kind of stuff. Okay, the same thing can go for your internship. And now let me be very clearly telling you, because this was a question in the initial thing which has come up, that when we are, this is a general fact, people know mostly, and kind of, this is a kind of stereotype actually which is coming up, that engineers, please don't expect them to express much in language. They will express a lot of thing in work. So this is a good thing as regarding the engineers. So don't worry about your language and expression. Okay? However, it is definitely a medium. So even when you have to explain your technical things or your critical thinking abilities, etc., that bare minimum you have to logically explain, which all of you have it, no doubt about your logical and reasoning, etc. Do it in Hindi, do it in any language you want to do it. Okay, so I think that's all I wanted to say. If anything else anybody would want to add. Okay, so Kirti, Arushi,
Yes, ma'am.
if
Thank you so
that's
much, ma'am.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks a lot. We'll call it a day. Thank you very much, everyone.